Okay, let's dive right into this episode. We're going to uncover a massive hidden mystery behind the current AI boom that almost nobody in the mainstream is talking about right now. We constantly hear about the breakneck speed of artificial intelligence, right? The groundbreaking models, the sheer computational power driving the whole shebang. But beneath the surface of all those flashy headlines, there is a physical, logistical, and financial puzzle quietly unfolding behind closed doors. So today, we're going to look closely at the actual numbers and the supply chains to understand exactly what is happening in the physical world of AI. To really grasp the scale of this mystery, we have to start with the money. In 2025 alone, the world's biggest tech companies poured a staggering $400 billion into AI infrastructure. I want you to really let that number sink in. $400 billion in a single year. And this isn't for software development. We're talking about hard infrastructure. The physical servers, the silicon chips, the miles of wiring, and the concrete that actually makes AI run. It's a level of capital deployment that is honestly almost unprecedented in modern corporate history. To put that mind-bending number into perspective, because it's almost too big to comprehend, that $400 billion is the financial equivalent of 9 Manhattan projects, or 2 entire Apollo space programs, all squeezed into a 12-month window. We are currently witnessing a situation where more money is being spent on building data centers than on constructing single-family homes across the entire country. But here's the catch. While the tech giants are shoveling out cash at this historic rate, the reality on the ground is telling a much quieter and frankly more terrifying story. Reports show that over half of the data center sites that were actually supposed to open their doors this year have been delayed or just outright canceled. And that brings us to a glaring paradox. How on earth can we be spending 9 Manhattan projects worth of cash while simultaneously canceling the very buildings that cash was meant for? On one hand, you have press releases screaming about record-breaking demand and exponential growth. But on the other hand, you have giant red canceled stamps being slammed onto data center blueprints. Logically, both of these things just cannot be true at the same time. Something has to give. So let's trace exactly where these highly coveted, incredibly expensive chips are actually going. The mystery really deepens when we look at the hard data. Now, we measure this kind of massive computing power in gigawatts. Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, recently claimed that they shipped about 10 gigawatts worth of GPUs in 2025. That is a massive, massive amount of hardware. But here is where the math totally breaks down. Goldman Sachs ran their own estimates, and they found that there are only 7.7 gigawatts of AI data centers actually in operation on the entire planet. Just let that contrast sit with you for a second. 10 shipped, but only 7.7 operational. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mystery we are dealing with today. If you just do the simple math, we are missing roughly 2.3 gigawatts of compute. And look, that isn't just some accounting rounding error. 2.3 gigawatts is enough electricity to power the entire city of Chicago. We literally have a Chicago-sized ghost town of cutting-edge tech that simply doesn't exist in the active real world. So, if the buildings aren't ready to house them, where exactly are all these chips sitting?
Well, the answer to where those chips are is actually as old as the Industrial Revolution. It's a supply chain phenomenon called the Bullwhip Effect. Because the supply of everything required to build out this AI infrastructure is just so incredibly limited, companies are in a total panic. They are desperately over-ordering. Even if they don't have a single server rack ready to go, they feel compelled to buy the chips immediately. They're essentially hoarding inventory just to keep their place in the supply line, which creates these massive, entirely artificial spikes in demand. This whole situation has led to a frantic game of just-in-case inventory management. Tech giants are buying everything they can possibly get their hands on, from the most advanced GPUs all the way down to basic electrical transformers. Because supply chain bottlenecks are literally everywhere. They're buying chips way before the data centers are built, and even when the buildings are constructed, they often find themselves stuck waiting in agonizingly long lines for local power utilities to actually connect them to the grid.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that this infrastructure lag is very real, and it's happening right in the epicenter of the tech world. Get this, right next to Nvidia's own headquarters, there are 2 fully fitted data centers currently sitting completely offline. Why? Simply because the local power utility can't keep up with the electrical demand required to turn them on. So inside those buildings sit racks of the most advanced technology humanity has ever produced, and they are literally acting as multi-million-dollar paperweights, just waiting for a plug. Now look, I'm not just here to rant about the ridiculous cost of hardware, though seriously, don't even get me started on comparing the specs of my 15-year-old desktop gaming computer to what's out there now. But I bring this up because this inventory hoarding isn't just a funny little logistical quirk, it's a massive financial risk. This panic buying is starting to show up in the numbers where it hurts companies the most, right on their balance sheets.
Let's look at Nvidia itself for a second. Their own inventory has quadrupled, 4 times larger since 2024. Now really think about that. If they were truly struggling to keep up with this insatiable, immediate demand, they shouldn't be sitting on billions of dollars of their own product, right? This ballooning inventory suggests it's actually getting harder to move these chips out the door. Or actually, much more realistically, the customers who supposedly desperately needed them can't even take delivery because they can't even plug them in yet.
And that brings us to the fatal flaw in this entire hoarding strategy. It's a cold, hard reality check that we call the depreciation trap, and it is the exact mechanism that could turn this entire $400 billion AI infrastructure boom into a massive, massive liability. The AI industry is currently caught right in the middle of this trap. Most tech companies are using, let's call it, incredibly generous accounting practices. They choose to depreciate the value of these expensive GPUs over 6 years on their books. But let's look at reality for a second. In the real world, AI hardware advances so incredibly fast that these chips are lucky to stay operationally viable and competitive for just 3 years. So you have this massive disconnect, generous financial valuations on paper, but rapidly aging hardware just sitting idle in the physical world.
Which leads us to a terrifying math problem for these companies, the e-waste equation. By the time these missing chips finally get moved from a dusty warehouse shelf into an active data center, they might already be completely obsolete. Add to that the fact that energy prices in some sectors have literally doubled. The cost to run an older, less efficient GPU will eventually exceed the revenue it actually generates. And at that exact tipping point, those pallets of hoarded cutting-edge tech effectively transform into multi-million-dollar e-waste.
So you see, this isn't just a temporary bottleneck. As the data shows, these data center delays aren't just minor hiccups. They represent a complete systemic failure of physical infrastructure struggling to catch up to the sheer hype and capital of the market. We've essentially built an AI gold rush where, as the saying goes, the shovels are being manufactured 10 times faster than anyone can dig the holes. The market is pouring in cash for the tools, but there is simply nowhere to put them to work. You know, they say the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So, I have to ask you, if the smartest investors on Wall Street are relying on generous, 6-year accounting tricks to hide the fact that their incredibly expensive hardware is essentially rotting in warehouses, who do you think is going to be left holding the bag when this massive backlog of inventory finally hits the market? It's a huge financial void just waiting to be reconciled. If you found this episode helpful and want to keep decoding how the world actually works, beyond the flashy headlines, don't forget to hit the like button, share this with someone who thinks AI is a guaranteed win, and subscribe to keep on learning. See you next time.